Hi everybody, I'm Mike McCrory and this is Would You Make It? So I have this table that somebody that I know has asked me to refinish, and it's going to be more than just a refinishing job because it needs a bit of restoration. When you look at the top, you can see that the veneer that was on top has sort of deteriorated and it really needs to be replaced. It's kind of an interesting table because the top lifts off and can be extended on both ends, and you can see at this end, the piece that was protected by the top is in much better condition, but I'm going to replace all of the veneer across the entire length of the table. That way I can have matching wood grain all the way from end to end. So let's get started. The legs are interesting because they look like they've been turned here with a large piece of wood, but in fact this has been added on, and these sections, they've been glued on, but the glue hasn't held up. So I'm going to try to repair that as well on all of the legs. I'm going to make my own veneer using a 12-inch wide piece of oak, and I'm resawing it down to just a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch thick. It was a pretty slow process to cut through that much wood, so I've got the video sped up 5 times the normal speed. I'll use a scraper to remove the loose pieces of veneer, and then I will run the piece of wood through the drum sander to remove all of the veneer that's remaining. It took 3 or 4 passes through the drum sander to get it down to the base material. And here I have the video sped up about 3 times the normal speed. And now I'll lower the drum sander to just under 1/4 of an inch, and that will be the starting thickness for the new veneer. And I'll run it through several times to remove all the sawtooth marks. And I ended up sanding it down to about 0.1 inch, so a little bit between 1/8 of an inch and 1/16 of an inch. I have the new veneer laid out in a book-matched fashion, and I'm just marking it to make it easy to line up when I go to glue it in place. And I'm using the cross-cut sled on my table saw to remove the veneer that was used on the edges of the board for the edge banding. And now I'm finding the center of the piece. I'll draw a straight line, and that will be the guideline for attaching the veneer. Now there are multiple ways of gluing up veneer. Some people like to use contact cement. Hot hide glue is a common option. A vacuum press or a vacuum bag would be another way to do it. I'm just using regular Titebond III, which I think will be fine for this application. I get the pieces lined up with a nice tight seam, and then I will tape it in place just to hold the seam or the 2 pieces together to minimize any gap that might appear. And then I'll turn the board over on top of a flat piece of MDF and put weights on top of it to hold it down, and that will be fine to keep it flat and to ensure that the veneer attaches securely. After the glue has dried, I use a sharp knife to cut through the veneer from the back side. And with the pieces that I just cut off the main tabletop, I'm aligning them onto the 2 extension pieces, and I'm taking care to make sure that I have the pieces in the right position so that I have a continuous wood grain when the table is reassembled. And
And similar to the first piece, I'm gluing them up, taping them, turning them upside down, and putting a weight on top. And then I'll use a flush trim bit to clean up any excess that may be overhanging the edge. And next I will apply glue to the strips that go along the edge, and I'll clamp them in place. After the glue has dried, I will clean up the strips with a hand plane to bring it down to be flush with the top, and then I'll clean it up with a sander at the very end. Prior to applying the stain, I'm applying a coat of pre-stain conditioner, which helps to ensure that you get a nice uniform consistency with the stain. For the stain, you can wipe it on or use a brush. I happen to use a brush in this case, but either method will work fine. After I brushed it on, then I wiped it down with a paper towel to remove the excess.
The pieces for the tabletop are stained, and while the stain is drying, I'm going to prepare the base and get it ready for finish. So it's just going to require a lot of hand sanding along the edges and around the legs, and that's all there is to it.
Just like on the tabletop, I'm applying pre-stain conditioner to the base.
So the stain on the tabletops is hardened, and I've given it a light sanding, and I've also sanded the base. I've coated the base with pre-stain conditioner, but I've decided it's dark enough already, so I'm not going to stain it any darker. So it's ready to apply the finish, and I'm going to use a spar urethane. That'll give it some waterproofing, and it will make it suitable for storing outdoors.
I have 3 coats of spar urethane on the base and on the top, and now I'm going to do a final sanding on the top and put the 4th and final coat of finish on the top, and only on the top. Just wiping it down to remove any of the dust, to make sure I have a nice clean surface, and I'm using denatured alcohol to wipe it down to make sure that I don't add any moisture to the top.
Alright, the urethane is dried overnight, and now as a final step I'm going to rub down the finish with some pumice stone and some paraffin oil mixed together, just to give it a nice smooth finish and remove any remaining little bubbles or bumps from the finish.
I'll remove all the excess oil and pumice stone with a paper towel, and then I'll apply a coat of paste wax. Here's what the old top looked like, and the new top. Here's the old table, and here's the new table. So I gotta ask, would you make it?